Pekin Community High School District 303 Board of Education regular meeting is now in session. Would everyone please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to share a piece of historical information with you. I'm proud of the fact that when we say the Pledge of Allegiance, we don't put a comma in there and pause. We say one nation under God, which is the correct way to say it. And that occurred, I think, in 1954. Sarah wasn't with us then. You weren't either?
Neither was I, Mr. Howard.
Oh, here we go. It's getting crazy already.
Mr. Howard, it's you and
Sad but true, Mr. Huey. Okay, well, we'll get serious now. And I'll call this meeting to order. Today is Monday, November 23rd. And Mr. White will be so kind to call the roll, please.
Allison Greeny.
Here.
Vera.
Here.
Hill. Here. Trollheimer.
Here.
Huey.
Here.
Wrigley.
here.
Howard.
Here. We have the necessary quorum and we can continue with board business. Next item of business being the approval of minutes. Those minutes being the Student Achievement Committee meeting of September 17th. And then we have Operations and Maintenance, a regular board meeting, and a closed session board meeting. All three of those were October the 26th. And then we had a special board meeting with a closed session in addition, and both of those were November the 9th. And then on November the 16th, we had a special closed board meeting. I'd be seeking a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Motion by Mrs. Hoheimer and second by Mr. Hill to approve the minutes as presented. Are there questions, comments, or changes? We do have Mr. White in the equation, so that's why they're good. Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Trollheimer.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Allison Greeny.
Aye.
Vera.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Minutes stand approved as presented. Next item is communications, public comments, and participation. And it is our tradition to begin with board applause. And tonight, if I could, I'll start with Mr. Huey.
Well, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Steger for bringing in a very accomplished cellist, Dr. Brenton Arvell Smith, who plays in the Houston Symphony and teaches at Rice University. And his presentation was the relationship between math, science, and music. And he pointed out how training and experiences in the arts enhances performance and knowledge in other related areas, particularly in math, but in all other areas too. And since that is a theme of the CTE department here at PCHS, I thought it was very appropriate that Mr. Steger would indeed give students from other departments in the school, math and science, so forth, an opportunity to hear from a noted individual such as this.
Thank you, Mr. Huey. How about you, Mr. Wrigley?
My board applause tonight goes to Mrs. Smith on her election to the Alliance officership, in particular the President's Chair. So congratulations to you. Look forward to working with you over the next year.
Very good, Mr. Wrigley. Mr. Hill, we're going to pass on you because your voice is still funky.
That's right. Thank you.
Okay. Out of appreciation, we'll do that. How about you, Mrs. Hoheimer?
I would like to congratulate Eric Ewan and the PCHS speech team. They split into two teams Saturday and placed in the top three schools at both contests. The junior-senior team placed second at Charleston. The sophomore-freshman placed third at Peoria Richwoods in varsity competition. Very excited for them. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. How about you, Mr. Alessandrini?
The Mid-Illini Conference recently announced soccer and cross-country all-conference teams. Sophomore Colton Dunkelbarger was named to the first team for cross-country. junior Alex Olar was named to the second team in boys, and freshman Paige Arsenault was second team girls, and in soccer, senior Max Schimmelfending was named to Mid-Atlantic Conference team.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. How about you, Mr. Vera?
I'd like to recognize 7 students, Jacqueline Mulvey, Gabrielle Stiles, Robert Wilson, Brandon Selberg, CJ Carlson, Patrick Green, and Caleb Wilson. They took it upon themselves to go out several weeks ago, actually on Halloween weekend, and collected on their own for the canned food drive and donated whatever they collected to the Student Council canned food drive. And they did this on their own with no direction to do so. It was just out of the goodness of their hearts.
That's very commendable. Truly, they've got the spirit of the process, don't they?
I agree.
Agreed. I'd like to direct my board applause to Mrs. Sinus, Mrs. Holton, I don't know if I said that correctly, and their talented and committed students. This is an email I sent to them in reaction to the mural they painted in the VFW Hall, and I think many of you saw pictures of it and even had a description of it, but it was 45 students working together for 5.5 hours to paint the mural, and I basically just said, please share the gratitude and appreciation of the Board of Education for your seemingly never-ending mission to showcase our wonderful students and their talents. I went on to say it would be difficult to find a better example than this of the fine caliber of students at the PCHS. In addition, I said how fitting it is that they also honor fallen dragons in the process. Thank you very much for that effort. Now, the highlight of the evening, and I didn't recognize her because she didn't have her athletic gear on, and she's all ready to come. So come on up, Sarah. I'd have to tease you a little bit because it gets that smile going.
Yeah, it's sports awards tonight, so.
That's what's going on, huh?
Yeah. So a few things that we're working on. We have Winter Spirit Week that we've had a committee working on. They'll be having a booth during lunch for trivia and just fun things for people to do to dress up during the week. Another thing is last Friday we had our life skills party. So we have all the life skills kids come in during their lunch and they play games with us, and we had pizza and cotton candy and popcorn and just have them do fun things with us and just be able to interact. And then our biggest thing is canned food drive, as I'm sure you know. And we've been collecting cans for the last couple of weeks, and tomorrow is actually when we'll be delivering. And so we will be distributing food to 100 families tomorrow, so it's going to be really exciting. And yeah, that's about all we have going right now.
I think that distribution process will give you the opportunity to see firsthand what your effort is leading up to, and I think that's got to be a gratifying feeling.
Yeah.
And it kind of probably puts things in perspective for some people.
I think definitely does.
I think it does.
Yeah.
Well, good job, Sarah.
Yeah.
And good luck later on at the athletic awards.
All right.
I'm sure you'll be hopping around in that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sarah, I just wanted to commend you. I got an email this call might have shared with you from the director of the Park District, thanking all of you for your cleaning up of the livestock building after you use it for floats, because they went in afterwards to use it for a different event and it was cleaner than when they had left it. So they commended you as students, and that's a good reflection, so I appreciate that.
Yeah,
so thank you.
The audience looks kind of sparse tonight, so I doubt that we'll have any public comments, and unless Mrs. Smith wants to make a victory speech of some sort. You'll pass? Okay. Well, you can't say I didn't offer. Word, yes, very much so. Got that one right.
That's true.
That said, we'll move on to approval of claims.
Mr. President, I move for the payments of monthly warrants in the amount of $1,980,266.41 per summary information found on page 54 of the agenda. Detailed information on board bills and manual checks begins on page 83, and the manual checks on page 127.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. Questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Allison Greenie.
Aye.
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Vera.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Ridley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Monthly warrants will be paid. Next item on the agenda, we have a request for closed session regarding the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. In addition, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. In addition, student disciplinary cases as well as litigation on an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed session. Do we have a motion for closed?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Wrigley, second by Mrs. Hoheimer. Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Ridley.
Aye.
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Allison Greenie.
Aye.
Vera.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. We'll be going into closed session. We'll return as quickly as we can, and when we do return, we'll continue on with board business. Let the record indicate the board is back in open session at 8:21 p.m. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Before I call for a motion, is there anyone who would like an item separated out for a separate vote? Seeing none, I'd be seeking a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
I'm going to give that motion to Mr. Huey. Hearing voices all at the same time, and I'll give the second to Mr. Wrigley. So it's a motion by Mr. Huey and a second by Mr. Wrigley to approve the consent agenda as presented. Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Huey.
Aye.
Ridley.
Aye.
Allison Greenie.
Aye.
Vera.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Consent agenda approved as presented. I do think it's worth noting the donations within that consent agenda. The class of 1965 has donated $1,000 to fund 4 $250 scholarships for the class of 2016. I thought that was a nice gesture, and it'd be even more nice if other classes got on board with that one. And then I also want to point out that the Mrs. Robert I. Paulin Fund granted $100 to the Olive Mars Lonis Scholarship Fund. Next item on the agenda is a matter of student discipline.
Mr. President, I would move that student being identified as 15-04-16 be expelled for the remainder of the 2015-20 school year and the first semester of the 2016-2017 school year, eligible to return in January of 2017 for reasons of gross misconduct.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Allison Greenie.
Aye.
Vera.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Ridley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Student identified as 15-04-16 is hereby expelled as the motion indicates. Next item on the agenda, we have some policies for a second reading, and that calls for Mr. Wrigley.
Yes, the policy committee is presenting 11 policies for a second reading. Those policies are 2-160, 2-260, 5-50, 5-170, 5-180, 6-140, 7-10, 7-40, 7-310, 7-325, and 880. The recommendation from Policy Committee is for formal board adoption of these policies as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Wrigley. That recommendation coming from committee means that it does not require a second. So before we vote on the matter, I would ask if there are any questions, comments, or discussion regarding these policies. Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Ridley,
Aye.
Allison Greenie,
Aye.
Vera,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Hoheimer,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Wrigley, or Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Policies approved as presented. In addition, I'd like to extend the board's appreciation to the policy committee members because some of these are easy and some of them are not easy. It's kind of a difficult process at times. Next item. Mrs. Schaefer, would you like to talk about Unland Insurance renewal, please?
Sure. We are due our policy renews December 1st, and so I met with Afton Booth from Unland Insurance to go over our premium for our renewal. Last year we were at $369,249 annually. We increased, a couple reasons we increased 2% overall before we added an additional coverage, which I'll talk about in a minute. But we increased 2% overall from last year, mainly in the area because of our workers' compensation rate. Actually, a couple different areas went down, but overall we were still up 2%. The other piece of it, though, that increased it was we included a premium for cyber liability. It's a piece of the premium that we have not, it's coverage we have not had in the past. Basically gives us additional coverage if for some reason our network would be breached or something would happen and that we would have social security numbers or anything like that that would get out into the public. It helps to cover the costs of correcting that. So we thought that it was prudent to have that. He actually recommended that last year too, so we did include that this year. So our premium this year on an annual basis is $385,985. So the recommendation would be for board approval to renew the district's insurance package through Liberty Mutual for an annual premium of $385,985.
Thank you, Mrs. Schaefer. Do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Motion by Mr. Hill, second by Mrs. Hoheimer, to approve or to renew the district insurance package through Liberty Mutual. Questions, comments, or discussion?
When's the last time we went out for full?
A couple years ago, we did a quote on just the workers' comp piece because that's the biggest part of it. And at that time it was still Indiana Insurance, and the Liberty Mutual bought them out, but it was still recommended to stay with Indiana Insurance. So.
And we've been happy with Liberty.
Yeah,
taken over from Indiana.
Yeah, they've been fine. They've actually got a few more resources and things online that have been useful. So, yeah, we've had no issue.
Further comments or questions? Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Hill,
Aye.
Hoheimer,
Aye.
Allison Greenie,
Aye.
Vera,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Ridley,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Insurance renewal approved as presented. Mrs. Shaver, would you like to continue with designated bank signatory resolution?
Sure. On page 211 of your materials is a resolution that Pekin Community Bank has asked us to have the board pass and have that signed, basically to allow the signatories on our accounts to be the superintendent or the director of business operations / treasurer. Because we're moving our funds there effective January 1, they wanted this resolution on file. And so it's just a matter of practice to ask for board approval for that. One other thing too, when we met, they also explained to us that because we went with them, that they are now offering a $10,000 donation to the high school. So we were very grateful for that and expressed our thanks. And we are still working on trying to figure out what we're going to earmark that for. We don't have the money yet, but that's a conversation that we've had administratively around where we would like to put the funds. So they want us to tell them that, and then they'll write us a check, and then we can use it for whatever source we choose to. They wanted to go towards though something that's for all students, and something I think that is really more geared toward like high need students. So we're still discussing where we would put that. So we're very appreciative of that.
Thank you, Mrs. Schaefer.
Mhm.
Do we have a motion to recommend board adoption of the designated bank signatory resolution as presented? Thank you, Mrs. Holheimer. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Wrigley, thank you.
Question.
Questions, comments, or discussion?
We have it in board policy 480 that the school district must be signed by either the treasurer or board president. But then in section 1, they're listing the superintendent.
Yeah, we talked about that because we noticed that as well, but it's always been practice for the superintendent to be on those bank cards as well.
So I
And so we
guess
probably need to address policy.
yeah, I would suggest
Yeah.
the policy committee to go
Yeah.
back and look at policy 480. And
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Holheimer,
Aye.
Ridley,
Aye.
Allison Green,
Aye.
Vera,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Bank signatory approved as presented. Mrs. Schaefer, it's your night in the barrel. Would you like to talk about estimated tax levy?
I think everybody has a hard copy too in front of them. This might be kind of hard to see up in the front. Okay, so we'll just go through each slide. If you have questions, just stop me. That's fine. If there's something specific you want to discuss on each slide, just let me know. So the first slide just goes over the specifics of what PTEL is. It's the Property Tax Extension Limitation Law. It's designed to limit increases in property tax extensions. You increase the dollars collected or your extension over the prior year, it's limited to the lesser of the consumer price index or 5%, whichever is lesser of those two. Simply stated, CPI is inflation. And for this year, for the 2015 levy, the CPI that we're using is 0.8%. And the levy that the board approves at next month's meeting, it actually affects our 2016-17 budget. So it's the 2015 taxes collected in 2016. This chart is just a history of where CPI has been over the course of since PTEL has been enacted. So you can see it fluctuates. In most recent years, 2007 was the highest we've ever seen, which was 4.08%. Last year we were at 1.5%. This year we're looking at 0.8%. Those numbers come out typically at the end of December, so we'll know for the next levy here in a couple months what that's going to be. I think right now it's tracking to be over 1%, but I don't think not much higher than this year. This slide just gives you a graph of what the history of our EAV has been here at Pekin High School. This year it did increase a little over 1% from last year. Last year we were at about $628 million. This year we're estimating a little over $634 million. Included in this EAV is an estimated $5.7 million in new property. Of that, there's about $1.9 million from one particular property that came off an abatement that had expired. So that came on the rolls as new property this year. So fairly consistent with last year. nice to see a slight increase. This is the history of our new property values, as I discussed. It's very comparable to last year. In 2010, I always point out, because that looks like a year that obviously stands out amongst all the other years, but that was a year we had a TIF district that expired, and so that year we had about $2.8 million that went into new property from a TIF district. So that's why that year was so much higher than the others. Overall, new property this year is down though around $200,000.
And is that the large abatement that came off from that 1.1 million? That's included in that 5 point whatever?
Right.
Okay. And do you have an idea of what properties are coming up for that, or is that something you really just have 1 year snapshots?
For the abatements, I do. I typically get that information from the county clerk, and so they're in that abatement period for a 5-year process. So I know which new ones are coming on, and I can see which ones. So I know. So yes, I can see that.
Create some trending.
Yes.
Data. Okay.
Yes. This slide is basically what shows us how we compute our limiting rate calculation. I know it's a lot of numbers there, so I'll try to make this as simple as possible. Essentially what you have to do is you take your prior year extension. So last year we received, where you see the $11.8 million, and you multiply that by the 0.8% CPI to get what your increased levy would be. So that gives us just shy of $12 million. Then what you have to do is take your estimated EAV for the year and back out the new construction figure to get to an EAV that does not include new construction. So that's the $628 million. You divide the $11.9 million by the $628 million, and that gives you basically your limiting tax rate of 1.9018. New property is not limited to the CPI of 0.8%, but it's limited to, but overall, you still have to stay within this limited rate of $1.90. I'm just going to highlight some things on this slide because obviously there's a lot of numbers. Off to the left is each fund that we levy for, so the education, operations and maintenance, IMRF, transportation, working cash, health, life, safety, special education, liability insurance, FICA, and then lease and rent. So those are all the funds that we can levy property tax dollars in. So really the highlights on this slide basically are, if you look toward the bottom of the slide, it has a capped increase of $203,827. So essentially what all these formulas are doing are telling you what your new dollars in property tax will be over the prior year. So the new dollars that we will get in property taxes is estimated to be the $203,000. Of that, $94,870 is from existing property, and then almost $109,000 is from new property. So that's where we're generating the $203,000 in new tax dollars. We expect an increase of about 1.7% then, and that does not include bonds. So your bond fund is completely separate from, it's not under PTEL. That's based on basically the bonds you've issued and what you've done as a board to pass all of those resolutions. It's not in the capped rate. So if you look at the bond levy fund, our estimated levy in the bond fund is about $1.5 million. And what that includes is the principal and interest on the debt that we issued. So it's for the 2014 refunding bonds we did, and for the 2015 health life safety bond issuance. If you remember when we went through all of those processes, our intent was to try to keep that rate at basically a 23.5 around that rate, keep that consistent. And if you look at last year's rate, we were at about 0.2383. This year we expect to be at about 0.2382. So we were able to accomplish that, so that was good. Any other questions on this, on any of these figures? I threw this slide in again. I don't know if any of your breakout sessions. What did that just do? Well, you guys all have. Are you okay if I don't put it up there next week? Deb, you have a hard copy, don't you, out there? I'm sure you're okay. So Senate Bill 318 is a hot topic right now. I had talked about this a little bit during the budget hearing. Right now, there's nothing. I think it's still sitting in the House. I think it's been extended now to talk about in their December session. But essentially, what Senate Bill 318 is, it's introducing tax caps for all government units. So obviously, we already live under tax caps, but there's other school districts that don't. So for them, this would be a completely new concept. But what it does mean for us is that it would freeze our extension where we are for the 2016 and the 2017 levy. So that would affect our 17-18 budget and our 18-19 budget. So right now, there's nothing more necessarily to report on that. It's still out there. So it's just basically kind of an FYI that potentially could still happen. This next slide just shows a reminder of what, over the course of several years, what the board has saved local taxpayers by essentially abating bond payments and through bond refinancing. Fortunately, in the last few years, we haven't been able to do abatements just due to obviously the funding situation that we're in, but in previous years, the board has always taken the stance that if we have additional revenue or excess revenue, that we would go back and abate in the bond fund, which essentially means that we would use our own operating funds to pay back the principal and interest on the bonds, and we wouldn't ask the taxpayers to pay that money. And so over the course of several years, the board did abate funds, and then through refinancing, so in total, it's close to $5.8 million that the district has given back to the taxpayers through abatements and through refinancing. This next slide is basically just some snapshots of some properties within different townships within the Pekin High Schools district. And I started doing this a few years ago just to kind of give an idea of what our rate looks like on someone's tax bill. Now obviously this does not include any of the other taxing districts that you see on your tax bill. This is just what a person's paying into Pekin High School. So we're estimating, if you look, there's just all these different concepts. So if you look at the first one, this is a house that has an EAV of $30,830. Their taxable value, if you multiply that, the fair market value of that house, if you multiply that number by 3, that's the fair cash value of that house, but the taxable value is a third of that. Then you have to back off any exemptions that person may get. So this person lives in their home, so they get an owner-occupied exemption of $6,000. If you're over, I think, 65, you get a senior homestead exemption, so this person gets an additional $4,000 off their EAV, and then that brings this particular house to a taxable value of $20,830. So what I did was plugged in our rate from last year of 2.12698, and it showed that this person paid $443.05 to the district. This year, I basically left everything the same, assuming the EAV is the same, and showed what our tax rate was for 2015, what we're estimating of 2.13998, and this same person would pay $445.76 to the district. So for this particular person, they could potentially see a $2.70 increase on their bill. So that's basically the concept throughout that whole slide of taking just different homes and different assessed values and what it looks like. And this is just, the next slide is just a graph that shows the trend of what our rate has done over the last several years. So this year we're only anticipating hopefully about a 1 cent increase on our rate excluding bonds. So on the next slide, essentially there's two different
side-by-side comparisons. The presentation, what I always do throughout the presentation is give you the numbers that are the very best guess based on everything we know from the county clerk and the assessment office, and we do get very, very good data from the assessment office. That's not always been the case, but in most recent years, our data has been very good from them, and so it's very reliable. And so we always base our projections basically on the data that they provided. But what we do when it comes time to actually certify the levy and put it in and certify that with the county clerk is we inflate those numbers by about 1% just to make sure if something's missed that we're capturing everything. So what I'm showing on the left-hand side is what we project our rate to be. On the right-hand side, it's about 2 cents more because that's what we'll submit to the county clerk, knowing that PTEL is going to bring us back down more than likely to $1.90. But if for some reason there was an error or there was an abatement that was missed or something strange happened, we know that we have some cushion and that we're able to capture everything that we can. And so that's kind of in the philosophy and how we've done that. So in December, when I come back to you to have the certificate of tax levy approved, you'll actually see the numbers that are on the right-hand side of that sheet. The other thing that we've discussed, that what the board has approved for several years now, is that we've always waived a student fee. And so this year, our recommendation would be to waive that 2016-17 fee waiver again. We have waived the student fee since 2006-07 school year. We're about just under 50% free and reduced. So if you estimate that we'd have a 50% collection rate at $75 per student, we have the potential of collecting about $75,000. So that's what we basically are giving up. So it would be our recommendation to waive that fee again next year. Obviously, we look at this closely every year to make a determination. Danielle, do you want to speak?
I think one of the things that we continue to talk about, and we've continued to talk about, is figuring out what our next direction is with technology in our building. Whether we're at a point where we need to go one-to-one, whether we're at a point where every student needs a device. And I think we have an acting technology committee, we're continuing to discuss that. And I think we're a ways out from, yes, we're here and here's what it's going to look like. But I would anticipate as those conversations continue that if we get to a point where, yes, we want to be one-to-one, and that includes some kind of, obviously, purchase or lease or some rental or something of a device, that would potentially be a time where I think it would be our interest to then reinstitute something of a fee that, whether it's still called the student fee, whether it's called a technology fee, whatever that case may be, that may potentially help pay for that, that would probably be a time when we may say it might be time to bring that back, and it's then paired with, with something of that nature. It's not to say that prior to that we may not feel like there's a need, but that's what I would anticipate kind of down the road, being able to then maybe sell that, because right now obviously our students are used to coming to high school having paid fees, and they do not. But that would maybe be a potential way of helping to finance that a program like that.
The next slide is just the same cash summary that I would have presented in the September board meeting with the budget. Just a reminder of what our fund balances look like and where we're at. I know it's very small, sorry. So in summary, we will have board action on the levy at the December 14th meeting. At that time, then, once that's approved, I'll file that certificate with the tax levy with the county clerk, which then gets the ball rolling on the process to create property tax bills. And we don't need to have a public hearing or truth in taxation because we did not request any increase of more than 5%. It's less than 5%, so it's not required by law. That's all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions, comments, or discussion?
As always, great work.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
One thing I always like to point out, Mrs. Schaefer, and and hopefully you always say, yeah, you kind of got that right. One of the things I've always been pleased and proud of for this district and its fiscal responsibility is how we've always done our abatements from cash on hand. And I think there are districts in our immediate area that have done abatements before they knew, and then they got themselves in dire straits. So what I just said, is that basically true?
Yes.
Thank you. And therefore, I think we should kind of pat ourselves on the back a little bit. Agree?
Yes, very much so.
That's the closest I've ever come to getting you there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you as well. Next item is reports. We begin with Mrs. Hoheimer, resignations.
I'm pleased to report that this is the second month in a row. We have no resignations to report.
That's an exciting trend. Keep it up. Thank you. How about Policy Committee, Mr. Wrigley? Anything beyond what you did tonight?
Policy Committee did not meet this evening, but we probably will be meeting here in the short term to discuss potential policy for 80, as well as some others possibly. So nothing to report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Wrigley. How about Operations and Maintenance, Mr. Alessandrini?
We did not meet this evening, but we did have a bid opening today, and as we begin to plan for other projects, I'm sure we will be meeting.
No doubt about that. Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. How about Labor Management Relations Committee, Dr. Owens?
We did not meet this month.
How about Student Achievement Committee, Dr. Owens?
We did meet last Thursday. We met and continued discussions around credits needed to graduate moving forward with a potential 7-period day and what that would look like for total number of credits and whether that needs to be phased in. And there's some solid conversations around that. Kind of makes your head spin around a few times when you're talking about what that should look like for the class of 2020 or the class of 2019, and should every class be different, and how does the 7-period day factor in when not every student in Pekin High is going to have 4 years of 7 periods. And so there's some math involved, which is usually not my strong suit, but in summary, we will be bringing to the board a proposal for graduation requirements moving forward, and that will come before you then in December.
That committee has been extraordinarily hardworking, and I believe extraordinarily faithful to the tasks in front of them, and therefore I think the members of that committee should be commended.
They do good work.
They've done good work and they continue to do it, and just want them to know it's appreciated. How about FOIA requests?
We did have one centering around a student discipline case that was a FOIA request from a news channel, a local news channel, which responded back based on the information that they wanted, that was not information that could be divulged. So positively did not provide any materials, but it was a request.
And you're meeting your obligations.
Correct.
Thank you very much. How about III conference recap, Dr. Owens?
I think we had a good conference. From the first general session, I think everybody actually was impressed, very much so, by the second general session. That Saturday morning was excellent. Carla actually presented on bonds, so she had a great crowd at hers, even despite the weather that was prohibitive for some. But we also had a resolution that was brought forward. Joe worked on behalf of our district in terms of a resolution around the sealed bid process that we're hinged to in terms of selling that student construction house, and that actually went through. So thanks to him and his work on that, and we're going to move forward and hopefully find some people that carry the torch for that, with the state legislature, and see if we can get some movement done. But that was great, and it was nice to have our name connected to that. So overall, a good trip.
I was pleased to learn that they too use a consent agenda process, and Joe's resolution was part of that consent agenda, and I thought, yes! Nice. Good job, Mr. Alessandrini.
And that's been debated topic to use the consent agenda.
Is that right?
At the delegate assembly, because some boards do not, on any item, use a consent agenda.
Does that tend to be smaller boards, Joe?
No,
It doesn't?
not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
But there were 4 items on the consent agenda for the delegate assembly. One item was pulled off, that any individual can stand up and pull anything off. The one on the charitable tax exemption for hospitals was pulled off. The board member that did speak there, he's a consultant for hospitals, and kind of had a personal interest on why he didn't think that the association should move forward and on that, but it did in fact pass overwhelmingly. The 2 other resolutions that were not heard, there was no timely appeal filed, so they were not heard. Phil Pritzker was elected president of the association, and Joanne Osman was elected vice president of the association. I do know that on Sunday morning at the board of directors meeting, they have an election for treasurer, which comes from the board of directors, and Tom Neely, who is our director and is from Morton, was elected treasurer of the association.
Well, that's nice to know. Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. Next item, curriculum update. Lynn.
Well, I don't need 2 of them. Sorry. I will direct your attention to the documents that begin on page 213. In December, I will be bringing to you official recommendations for courses that will be new to our curriculum in 2016-17. We did have quite a few courses that were proposed by various departments, anticipating a 7-period day and knowing that we would have the availability to offer additional things to our students. I'm just going to quickly go through these. If you have questions, stop me and ask at any time. The first one is a joint class between the CTE and the special education department, which would be integrated culinary arts, intended for students at the CC level. It would be offered to them once they have finished their freshman year, and would be a way for them to get acclimated in a co-taught manner, one CTE teacher, one special education teacher, in the culinary arts program, and then if they so desired, they would be able to continue on to the general culinary arts program. This is a class that we felt has been needed in the past, as we're starting to see an increase, which is great, of special education students wanting to take culinary arts. The next course, a few pages of supplementary information there. The next course is coming out of the CTE department. This is a technology support internship that would be offered year-long. Basically, with the opportunity for students to take it for a full year, but it would more than likely be offered in conjunction 1 and 2 together in the same class period is what we're guessing. But this is a way for us to grow our computer information and maintenance type of internship opportunities for students to service technology support within our own building, which obviously the more technology we get, the more needs we have, the more tech tickets, so to speak, we get. And many of our students are quite capable after going through networking and those types of courses to service those. And so this would be a new course to begin that process. Another one that might be coming to you that we don't have ironed out quite yet is the potential for a dual credit with ICC with our drafting course. That's looking like a positive, probably will happen, but we want to get the wrinkles ironed out first before we bring that to you. In our English department, it's new and it isn't new. We've had obviously English 3-4 on the books forever. But English 4 has traditionally been the semester of speech, and so students would maybe take English 4 before English 3 because it was speech and a literature-based class. We've noticed over the last several years that a concern is that when you take a student out of an English course for half of the school year, particularly students that struggle in language, literature, that they have a very hard time recuperating that missed semester in reading comprehension and reading fluency and that type of thing when they get back to it their junior year. So what the English department would like to do is basically rebrand English 4 as a literature-based course. It would tie into world literature, which ties purposefully into their global studies. The majority of them are taking at that same time period. But in order to do this fairly, because we do still believe that speech would need to be a required class, what would happen is students in the general track, so our title students and students that would just be in the English 3-4 track, would take English 4, the literature course, their sophomore year, and then they would not take speech until somewhere between their 11th and 12th grade year, when they probably feel a little bit more comfortable taking that course. And it would likely take the place of an English elective that they may have been able to take their senior year, such as etymology or mythology. They could still pick that up because with an extra class period in the day, if that's something they're passionate about doing, they could do it, but that way they wouldn't miss out on speech and they wouldn't miss out on that semester of literature. However, we know that a lot of our A track and AA track students go into AP courses, and AP courses in the English department start junior year, and they follow for a full year senior year. So we didn't really have the flexibility to move speech to the junior or senior year without them having to take essentially 9 classes in English, which is more than we have semesters. So we would not be changing English 4 for the A and AA track students. They would take speech, as they always have, and then they would have the availability to go on to the AP courses. So essentially, this is changing mainly for the non-A, AA track students. The next few are from the science department. We're excited about this because it's been a little while since we've had electives come out of the science department. This first one is for grades, mainly seniors, but potentially for juniors, to take anatomy and physiology. The prerequisites would be biology and chemistry, and then either biology 3-4 or health occupations 1, which we think is a neat extension into the CTE program as well. I think anatomy and physiology is somewhat self-descriptive, but that would of course be a year-long course. And then the next one for the science department is chemistry 130, which is a dual chemistry credit with ICC. We do have AP chemistry, so the difference here is more along the lines that the thought is students that would prefer to, that maybe in a health occupations direction field, would potentially find more value in a dual credit setting for chemistry versus students who really see themselves kind of going into that very scientific pathway in college, maybe perhaps preferring the AP track. So the idea would be that we'd offer both AP chemistry and dual credit chemistry next year. And then the last one for the science department is zoology. This would be for students grades 10 through 12, and it's a year-long course with biology 1-2 being the prerequisite. Obviously, this is sort of an extension of the animal kingdom from biology, and we think we have a lot of student interest in taking this course. And then our social studies department is going to be submitting a request for AP psychology. We would still be offering our general AP or our general psychology courses. AP would be in addition to that offered at the junior senior level. And next is Western Civilization. This is a spin-off of Global Studies. Essentially what would happen is Global Studies 2, the Global Studies that's offered second semester for students, would sort of be trimmed back a little bit so that they could go a little bit deeper into the material with a little less breadth of coverage. And then Western Civ would sort of pick up on that. So students could take either Global Studies or Western Civ and meet one of their social studies requirements. They could take both Global Studies and Western Civ if they are very passionate about that particular topic, but it would give the social studies department a little bit more flexibility and really doing justice to what they feel is curriculum both global studies and Western should represent. And special education is proposing 2 new courses for the 110 level. Etymology is obviously a course that we currently teach in our general education English courses, and they are also proposing mythology, so this would be a nice addition to extend these courses to our students that have IEPs, and they would be offered for 10-12 just as our general etymology and mythology are. We would be looking to involve students at the CC level in mythology, so that would be an additional course offering for them as well. And that is it at this point.
Thank you, Mrs. Bloom. Questions or comments?
Who puts together the course catalog? I mean, is this written by the departments? Do teachers take this on as a passion project and write this? Who comes up with this?
The department chairs go back to their teachers and ask if there are any desires to propose new courses, and then the teacher generally works with the department chair to create the document that you have, and make sure that they obviously have teachers in mind that want to teach them, but generally it's a teacher that's pretty passionate about pursuing that course.
As you alluded to with 7th period day, being so heavily talked about, I'm sure that sparked a lot of this. But it's incredible to see some of the thought and really thought and detail that went into putting these together. It's very impressive, and I'm excited to see them. The other one I'm sure our technology team is very excited about is this technology support internship. I can't imagine the thousands of tickets that they get every year, and to have some students that are talented in that field to be there to help them will be a help to not only them but also to our teachers as well, who probably are having and to students. Yes, so I love it. Congratulations, great work to you and to all the teachers that are and department chairs that put this together. This is some good stuff.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Question for you, being new to the board. The literature being used in the 3-4 English course, we will approve those texts, those books, and so forth separately from this.
In the spring, I'll bring to you additional texts and textbooks. Sometimes those aren't texts, they're novels or whatnot, and you will have the opportunity to review those the month prior to actually approving them as a board.
This process of expanding student opportunities within the district has always been one that has made me proud of Pekin Community High School. You don't have to look very far to see districts that are in dire financial straits, and one way they deal with those kind of things is they limit course offerings, and they increase class sizes, and they increase fees, and all kinds of negative things, and it's something they have to do out of necessity. But we've been fortunate here through good fiscal management that we're able to do the things we do and expand these offerings, and I'm even more so pleased that we have people at the faculty level that are excited and want to bring these things forward. They're from the ground up, and that's just absolutely the best way. So once again, I'm proud, and I don't think I'm alone in that respect. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Next item would be a future agenda item. Is there a particular item a board member would like to see on a future agenda? They're getting tired. Next would be the announcements by the president. I just want a reminder for you, the ISB Central Illinois Valley Division Winter Governing Meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, December 2nd at Metamora Fields Golf Club. So if you've signed up, please show up, and if you've never been there, it's a beautiful place. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education is scheduled for December 14th, 2015, which is the second Monday of the month, obviously because of conflict with the winter break. And then I would like to just simply say that speaking on behalf of the Board of Education and the administration, I want to extend our best wishes to our staff, our students, and the Pekin community for a Thanksgiving celebration that we hope is full of family, fun, and fellowship. Having no further business before this board, I declare this meeting adjourned until our next regular meeting, and thank you all for being here.